Story 1. I remember the random little things people tell me about themselves. With work, and I've done a lot of personal information stuff, I tend to tune it out and don't really remember any of it. Pretty much drawing a blank if someone comes up to me later that day asking, "Do you remember doing the information for XYZ?" and drawing a complete blank. If I have some kind of involvement with them though, then I pretty much learn all about them, to the extent that I'll remember practically anything they ever say to me, or any throwaway interactions that they have. They tend to love it when we go out for drinks though, because I tend to always be the sober one and pretty much remind them of everything after the event. For example, this one time, a bestie kicked me out, booked a room for a party, but it was something really trivial and told me to go home at like 2 a.m., then posted to Facebook around 7 a.m., who seemed to have lost Samdi at MH, but everything else is okay. Only to then be told by other people there that they essentially kicked me out. Another example is that I have a friend whose favorite DVD was a random present, and I was like, "Why are you shocked? You told me it was your favorite film like 2 years ago." Another time, I was going to Disneyland and I wanted to bring something back for my favorite manager. I asked her who her favorite Disney character was, and she said Dumbo, because she loves elephants. Skip ahead to 10 months later. On my last day at that store, I got her a card with an elephant on it. She looked shocked and asked me how I knew her favorite animal was an elephant. Yet, I can barely remember what I eat for breakfast sometimes. That's cool and all, but how does one accidentally learn all that? Story 2. Walking quietly, I used to practice being a ninja in primary school. Eventually, I would walk nearly silently, regardless of what shoes I wore. Now at work, I'm constantly scaring people, even when carrying things, since I walk a lot quieter than they're used to in heavy boots. Walking into a room to talk to someone and having their back turned is the worst thing. What should I do? Any sound I make is going to come from an area they think is empty, and no matter what I do, they get startled. Sometimes I either just turn around and try to walk in louder or just scream their name right behind them and get the most I can out of it. But sometimes, I still like to just stand behind them silently. Eventually they get the feeling that someone is there, then they turn around and get scared. Much better than saying boo. My coworkers are threatening to surgically attach a cowbell to me. Story 3. I have very fast reading comprehension. People never believe me when I say that I've already read it and get frustrated that I don't take longer. In the beginning, I had teachers at school who did not believe that I read as fast as I did. I'd get accused of not actually reading what we were supposed to until they started asking questions about it and I could answer them all. In primary school, we had a Read Books to Raise Money for Diseases of the Month readathon one year for almost the whole school year. I got accused of not actually having read the books I wrote down on my reading list because I'd gone through 300 plus books, most of which were well above the class reading level. Parents got called and verified that, yes, I'd blown through that number of books. I did hit the library multiple times per week and max out my library card each time, plus I reread multiple titles from my own personal, if small, library. If any family member didn't take out the maximum number of books in their library card on any day, I'd take out extra books and put them on their card. Plus, I was bored without enough books to read, so I also read books in the school library at lunch. And on the weekends, I would spend hours at the local library, blazing through their young adult and science fiction sections. The teacher then got asked to point out random titles on the list, and I proceeded to give an on-the-spot summary of the story and characters for each one she pointed out. My list was accepted. I was just angry that I was automatically assumed to be lying until an adult backed me up, and then they were automatically assumed to be telling the truth. I was eventually encouraged by my teachers for my fast reading, and I was usually allowed to finish my assignments in advance with other children and read whatever book I wanted after. A 6th grade teacher hated my ability to read quickly. She would give us 40 minutes to read a text and answer questions, and since it was usually no more than 3 to 5 pages, I would have it done in 15 and would start reading something else for fun. She would come over and stand over my desk, glower at me, and ask me why I wasn't doing my work like everyone else. I would hand her my assignment until I was finished, and then she would take it to the front of the class and, without fail, tell me loudly in front of all the students that if I did not get all the answers right, she would give me a 0 for the assignment. I never got a 0, which may have irritated her even more. Pretty much all I did as a kid was read, only child living in a place with no neighbors. I can't do simple math, but I read like lightning. The downside, though, is that when you can go through a book in 2 hours, it becomes an expensive hobby. I'm also very good with card handling, so everyone suspects that I cheat at poker. I encourage that because it keeps their eyes on my hands and not on my face. Story 4. Being a very persuasive salesperson. I sell phones. The job is boring, but I'm good at it, and the basic pay is good with a great bonus. Sometimes. My trick is being honest with customers. If someone's on the fence about an iPhone 7, I'll actively tell them I don't rate Apple and the S7 is cheaper and better. They'll actively say, No, I definitely want an iPhone 7. Okay, cool. Which color? I also do this to protect customers. I'll see missed payments or they'll tell me they're students or something and they're about to spend £60 a month on the 7 when they have the 6. I straight up ask them how the 7 will improve the way they use a mobile. Then I'll suggest they get a SIM-only deal for £15 to £20 and put the money they're saving towards the next iPhone. I'll tell every customer they can probably get free or cheaper insurance elsewhere. My boss tried to stop me from doing this, but I'm still overachieving in sales of phones and extras, and my honesty boosts NPS. So for the odd lost sale, I get an accelerated bonus for my customers liking me. It got to a point where I got really good at convincing people. My friends would introduce me to new people as the guy who could sell ice to an Eskimo, and I was always a major influence in people's decision-making. I was not doing it to be manipulative. I just genuinely believed I was helping people and that I gave good advice and that it was appreciated. After seeing how it made my close personal relationships a bit one-sided when it came to dating, and especially seeing how other people, referred to by some as betas, would cling to me and do anything for me, I felt a bit overwhelmed. The other side effect was that the combination of being really good at convincing people of things and always challenging myself led to a few sticky situations. See, you don't really think everything through because you're so good on the fly and good at getting out of trouble. You almost make worse decisions just because you know you'll get away with it. It's kind of messed up in hindsight, but in the split second of making a small decision, you kind of just think, why not? Man, if someone is too good at convincing people, I'd think they're trying to scam others. Story 5. Eavesdropping. I just passively listen to other people a lot when I'm alone, even if I'm doing something else. It gets really embarrassing when you bring up information you heard from their conversation, forgetting that you weren't involved, or when you laugh at a joke said by someone across the room. I used to work in the back of the bakery and would often work with people who didn't speak English. The girls in the front would always be gossiping about their boyfriends or other people who worked there or things happening around the bakery. I didn't really mean to listen, but I always knew everything that was going on. The manager was always like, "How do you know everything about this place?" When she would come and tell me something I already knew, I would just shrug and say, "I heard so-and-so talking about it." Eventually, she started to come to me for information. With phone calls, it's a little bit different, though. I always try to walk away from people or find a secluded place to talk on the phone because I know that when other people are around and on their phones, not only can I hear them, but I can often hear what the person on the other end of the call is saying as well, and the idea of someone doing that to me triggers some discomfort in me. It might be because of the few times I have phone calls, they always stray into private territory. Story 6. The removal of stains. I like to use lots of bleach and get the, "oh, you must be used to cleaning up the crime scenes." A, I like the smell of it. B, if I were cleaning up a crime scene, there are way better chemicals than bleach. I know all of these because one of my friends has a doctorate in chemistry and another is a crime scene cleaner. So to give you a few suggestions, sodium peroxide is better, especially for concrete. Chlorine bleach is terrible as it doesn't remove hemoglobin, so it is still detectable with hydrogen peroxide. Oxygen bleach is great, especially with hydrogen peroxide. The good stuff is the crime scene cleanup stuff. My friend says he isn't giving me the recipe but supplied me with some when I had blood all over my kitchen. The dog lost a fight with a cat over a bit of ham. He's okay now, though. And it was so easy to clean with. Story 7. I don't think it's really an everyday skill, but being able to tell somebody by the sound of their footsteps. When friends or family approach my door, I know who's about to knock. I love creeping them out by saying, "Come in, name here." I can tell a lot by the sound of footsteps. Who is it? Are they angry, happy, relaxed, drunk? Are they wearing shoes, heels, barefoot? Though I personally have a habit of tiptoeing everywhere, the way people walk is very distinctive and most people have no idea how unique their walk is. I have a mild problem with not being able to recall faces, even of family and people I see all day, every day. When it's people I work with, they're all in the same uniform, so not remembering faces sucks. I can be staring at your face and not recognize you, even when I've known you for years. It's embarrassing. So I developed ways of remembering them. I couldn't associate names with faces, so I associate names with other things. Voice is an easy one, and no one ever notices it, but the one that freaks people out the most is that I know who someone is by the way they walk and stand. I can spot people I know in a crowd of people wearing uniforms on the other side of a football field. I also associate smells with people. Shampoo they use, cologne, whatever, especially useful for ninja walkers who teleport behind you. Oh, and I recognize coughs, breathing, and footfall while running. During physical training hours, I hear someone approaching, recognize the sound of their feet, and greet them without turning my head and when they're a couple paces behind me. This is kind of cool, but in a freakish stalker kind of way. If you think those skills are mad, wait till you hear about the other stories of mad skills people have. So smash that like button and subscribe to my channel to find them out. Story 8. Typing. I'm definitely going to say typing. I type a little over 150 words per minute. I've been repeatedly accused of faking it, which sounds funny until it's your coworkers and boss saying it. Calling your work into question. People always seem suspicious when you can do something they can't. I'm autistic, and I have to admit that I've wondered if that contributes in part of my typing speed. I have partial hand paralysis, and part of the reason I started typing so much was the desire to improve on that. It didn't help even in the slightest, but now I type really fast. So I'm a writer. I use a QWERTY keyboard, and I've been typing for a minimum of 3 hours a day for the past 16 or so years. My typing speeds have been measured in varying tests for work and school, with the lowest coming in at 138 about 4 years ago, and middling out 6 months ago at 154. The highest I've scored in any reliable test was 157 last year. Typing speeds like mine aren't all that uncommon, certainly not as much as they used to be. Nothing special, I just type a lot. I find it much weirder that people find fast typing unlikely. I will note, however, that I also got a few job offers because of my typing speed. I had a space of about a year where I didn't have my own computer, so I did all of my computer work at the local library. I was approached 6 times by different people asking if I was available for hire as a secretary. I guess it's not all bad. Story 9. Being calm. People accuse you of being cold if you're not as agitated as they are. Some people ask me if I was a robot because nothing really freaks me out usually. In potentially dangerous or emergency situations, I go into an automatic, almost robotic communication mode where I feel the need to disseminate information clearly and sternly. Even if I seem dead calm, it's not that I don't have emotions, it's that they do not override logical or linear thinking for me. I can calibrate and project the appropriate amount of emotion to get my point across in this situation. I find it keeps others receptive to taking orders and handling a situation in a safe place. For example, my girlfriend crashed my car and the conversation was like this. Me. Are you hurt? Girlfriend. No, but the car. Me. Give me a few minutes, and I'll handle getting you and the car picked up. A few minutes later, everything was taken care of. My girlfriend arrives back home and is super sad and scared of my reaction, and I'm just like, so what shall we eat for dinner today? She just could not believe I was not raging around, and at some point she even got mad because she thought I would just play calm and gather all the rage inside me, which is kind of the only thing that makes me mad. Just accept already that I don't care about most things. Story 10. Interrogating someone without their knowledge. Back when Omegle was still a thing, my friend and I would make a game about trying to creep out people on Omegle. People in general are surprisingly unaware of how much information is easily accessible on the internet. With a casual ASL and a first name, we could often tell them stuff like the name of their school or help them find the cheapest place to find shoes nearby on Rose Avenue. More often than not, they would unwittingly give up further information that let us narrow down the specific neighborhoods they lived in and name the specific office their mom or dad works at. It has made me really good at working with search engines, and it has made people think I'm far more generally knowledgeable than I actually am. Story 11. Whistling. I can whistle the Android text tone and it freaks people out. I can also make a sound that is identical to the sound of a vibrating smartphone. It's basically a low hum through very slightly open lips and across your teeth. I used to sit in class and make this sound and people would freak out and check their backpacks or purses, and the teacher would get really irritated, since having a phone go off repeatedly is distracting. I just hope this dude doesn't whistle at night. Something might whistle back. Story 12. Running in high heels. Back in university, we had a charity event called Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. Guys raise money for charity and then walk through campus in heels. I was led to think that it was a race, and it just so happened that a girl with abnormally large feet had left a pair of heels in my buddy's room. A few of us got liquored up and practiced for a night, and it was surprisingly easier than we figured it would be. Anyways, it wasn't a race, so we got no glory, and now it's a pretty useless talent to have, foregoing any of us becoming drag queens anytime soon. Story 13. So, by an accidental combination of being a gearhead and at one time a tow truck driver, I'm a little more observant when it comes to cars than most. I also have a knack for numbers and memorize things unintentionally. I've stopped mentioning to people that I saw their car somewhere or other, in the movies, for example. It's awkward explaining that I know your plate and can spot your center from across the parking lot. I usually notice some small things, like a small ding or a paint chip or something. It just comes from years of detailing and installing aftermarket parts. Also, when I go to work, I do the parking lot scan to see who's at work and who's not. If all are accounted for but one and a different car is there, I instantly know who drove something different. I'll ask them what's wrong with your car. They're usually put off by it, thinking I have some psychic ability to know when their car is having a problem. No, just deductive reasoning. Your car isn't in the lot, but you are here. You must have been dropped off or driving something else. Story 14. I completely freaked out a guy because I'm observant and have a good memory. I saw a guy outside a cutie store around 10 a.m. on the far east side of town. He was probably early to mid-50s and a bit scruffy looking, in a nerf herder kind of way. Later, around 1 p.m., I saw the same guy standing at a crosswalk on the west side of town, waiting for the light to change, and then around 3 p.m., midtown, I decided to go to Denny's for a quick bite to eat, and there was a cute waitress I like. So sometime around 5 p.m., I'm just starting my meal, and guess who I see walking past me and going to the cash register with his bill? I thought to myself, wow. I couldn't resist. I get up, tap him on the shoulder, and say to him, I've seen you around town today. 10 a.m. at the east side QT, 1 p.m. at the intersection of North and East, 3 p.m. in front of the greedy money rubber bank on Broadway, and now here at Denny's Midtown. His eyes grew wide and he started stumbling backwards, away from me. He backed right into the next customer behind him, waiting to pay their bill. That startled him and he dropped his receipt and the $20 he was going to use to pay his bill, and he ran out of the restaurant and kept running until he was out of sight. I picked up the money and receipt, handed them to the waitress behind the counter and said something along the lines of, I hope he comes back for his change. Both the waitress and the customer who was waiting in line looked at me kind of funny. I didn't care. I went back to my table and finished my meal. I was just going about my business that day and happened to come across this guy several times in one day. Even I would have looked at that guy kind of funny. What he said had major stalker vibes. Story 15. Not me, but someone I know once mentioned to me back in their high school days that they were suspected of being a snitch because they would always be inclined to leave right before the bust happened. It wasn't that the guy was a snitch. He'd say that sometimes he just got a feeling or he knew when a party was just not flying. There was some sort of sixth sense to this. Every time he got around to leaving, his buddies would usually follow suit, since they were usually the ones dealing anyway. Story 16. In my freshman year of high school, a teacher accused me of cheating on a test because I finished it too quickly. Ironically, the test was on test-taking strategies. I used to challenge teachers because of that. I always read very fast, and I think very fast, which means I take tests very fast. You got it. Teachers always had something to say, but I'd say, give me a different test. Make up a test right now, I'll do anything, just tell me I'm good enough. And then I'd collapse on the floor, hyperventilating and sobbing, thereby making the teacher rue the day they questioned me, or the day they were born, depending on their worldview, I guess. Story 17. Sarcasm. It's gotten to the point where no one knows if what I'm saying is serious or not. Nothing hides the pain like some hilarious biting sarcasm. I come from a family with sarcasm as the armor on their coat of arms. Plus side, I can always detect sarcasm. However, I get a single tear like the Indian in the old commercial when I meet innocent people who cannot detect sarcasm. Oh, to have that innocence. But alas, I have seen too much of life's dirty. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. What are the best power moves you've ever seen someone do in real life? Story 5 will blow your mind. See you in that video.